Although I am involved with CADAC, the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada, the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the participants and do not reflect those of CADAC. And now, cue the music.
This is the Impulsive Thinker Podcast, a show for high-achieving ADHD entrepreneurs. Together, we will inform and educate you about how to improve your self-awareness while developing systems, routines, and habits for conquering the entrepreneurial world. Here is your host, Andre Brisson.
Hey there, it's Andre here with another short for the Impulsive Thinker Podcast, the podcast for the high-achieving ADHD entrepreneur. This episode is brought to you by CADAC, the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada. You can get more information and you can donate at www.cadddac.ca. I hope you had a good time listening to Femke Hovinga and myself this week talk about thinking errors. And this got me to thinking about my experience with CBT group therapy, or the cognitive behavioral therapy. And there we really concentrate on catching them, checking them, and challenging them. And the challenging part is actually challenging them and thinking about and comparing them to cognitive distortions. And cognitive distortions are negative or irrational patterns of thinking that affects our day-to-day. So, for example, if, something happened to me, this person jumped in front of me and cut me off, me jumping to conclusion right away is that this person is being irrational, disrespectful of my space, and just aren't paying attention and idiots. That's jumping to conclusions. So depending where you look, there's a range of 10 to 15 cognitive distortions. Some are subclassified. But anyways, I'm just going to give you a quick list of what I learned in my CBT training. And it was like, cognitive distortions are filtering the negatives, where we only focus on the negatives, the black and white thinking, which I think a lot of us can be guilty of, either or, overgeneralizing a situation that can be easier to accept, jumping to conclusions without the proper facts, catastrophizing, making a big deal out of little stuff, personalization or polarization is another one, control fallacies, creating falsehoods in order to control the situation in our minds, the fallacy of fairness, blaming others, shoulding, emotional reasoning, the fallacy of change, global labeling, also known as generalizing, always being right, and heaven's rewards fallacy, where we're always self-sacrificing for the better good. And what Femke and I were discussing was not exactly cognitive distortions. To me, it was cognitive distortions with the influence of the cognitive distortions. And what I mean by this is, according to her, thinking errors was things you mess up in your head due to creative filters that you created that supports your beliefs, and then you amplify it because it supports your belief. So cognitive distortion in CBT is basically, what is the cognitive distortion that's causing this distress or this situation for you to react to? And, if you're in CBT, it's probably because we're overreacting. So I really like the fact that it's due to creative filters that you created that supports your beliefs. Therefore, those situations are amplified in our minds. Okay. And the twist to this is that thinking errors are based on our thinking patterns that is or can be influenced by your personal experience, cultural effects, environment, and social effects. So this has nothing to do with you. In a way, it all has to do with what's around you. And what's really interesting is that what she mentioned that really hit me was the thinking patterns are created by you, by me, to protect you, which is me, and be accepted by your community. So let's think about that. The thinking patterns are created by you to protect you so you can be accepted by your community or by a community. And I want you to reflect on it a little bit. So yes, I'm saying that the thinking patterns that creates thinking errors based on these filters that we created ourselves creatively to support our beliefs has a lot to do with the influences externally. And I thought that was very profound, because if you're in a negative environment, or if you're in an environment that is always victimized, because of me, one example is someone I know, they can tell someone many, many times that they're doing it wrong. And then that other person tells them 99 times politely to say enough, no thank you. And then that 100th time finally tells the person off. While that other person goes, I'm the victim. Oh, I'm so poor. Oh, no, she was so mean to me. He was so mean to me. Oh, I didn't deserve all this. If you're around that steady, and I was, and you start to believe, I created a filter that I'm always looking to be the victim. So that's kind of a scenario of all this. And I thought it was very profound because this year really 2022, by the time you hear this, last year in 2022, I really started to focus on having the right people around me. And I noticed that my thinking errors were reduced by quite a bit. I was not thinking that people didn't want me around or they didn't respect me or they wanted me around to be goofy Andre. But I changed my environment and that positive influence with the social environment. Thinking errors, things you mess up in your head due to creative filters that you created that supports your beliefs and gets amplified. And these thinking errors are also based on the thinking patterns that are influenced by personal experience, culture, environment, social, and they're there to protect us. We created them in order for us to be accepted in the community. So the other thing that was really intriguing that Femke said, and I really stuck on it, I still think about it to this day, is positivity can only be accepted by the ADHD brain when it is our measurement, right? I've been saying all along, make sure it's your measuring stick that we're using to measure ourselves and not someone else's measuring stick. Because when we use society's measuring stick, we always fail. We can never keep up. And she just profoundly put it in a different way, saying that positivity can only be accepted by the ADHD brain when it is our measurement, when it's your measurement, your measuring stick. And reflecting on that, I am happier when I see progress when I'm measuring to my own positive success, my comparison to only me and to the way I work and to the goals that I set, not be somewhere else in comparison to someone else. Because a long time ago, I accepted a long time ago I wasn't normal. I shouldn't be using a cognitive distortion. I shouldn't be using the measurements that other people use, but I still did so I can feel part of that crowd. So there, I kind of created my own thinking pattern that I was never good enough to keep up just so I can fit in that community. And a lot of negative thinking, a lot of negative rumination and self-hate and becomes a core belief after a while that we're no good. And we can do that. And the other thing I want to end too on this one is, like she said at the end, you can create new patterns of thinking. So the thing I want to do, so based on what she said about positivity can only be accepted by the ADHD brain when it is our measurement, I want to add this to her statement. I want to add positive in there. You can create new positive thinking patterns. If you take a look at your social circle, the environment that you're in, the culture that you're exposing yourself to and want to be around, and your personal experiences. I really hope that you enjoyed the discussion with thinking errors. A lot of the cognitive distortions are within the thinking error setup, but because of the thinking patterns affecting the thinking errors, and it's us, the thinking errors are there because of the filters that we created, that's influenced by the thinking patterns that were created by us to protect ourselves so we can be accepted into a community or in our community. I'd like to hear what you think about this. Can you send me an email at andre@andreb.ca? I would love to hear your side of the story on this one or your thoughts on it. Thanks again. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Impulsive Thinker Podcast. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion for the show, please visit theimpulsivethinker.com. The Impulsive Thinker Podcast is produced by Tactical Breakthroughs and hosted by Andre Brisson. Remember, ADHD is only a part of you, not all of you.